How's it going, guys? Cameron here with Canadian Gamer coming at you with another video. Now, today's video, we're going to talk about the Analogue Pocket, which most of you are aware, at least if you follow me on Twitter, that I have recently received the Analogue Pocket. Before we get into that, a bit of housekeeping notes, if you will. I have been busy lately. I do apologize for the lack of content on the channel. I have been playing God of War 3. I got right to the end. I'm on chapter 8 out of 9. I'm having a lot of difficulty right now. I'm in sort of kind of like a mini boss battle that involves spikes that are coming up through the floor and you have to keep moving, and I'm getting kind of frustrated with it. I was hoping to put out a review, yesterday or even the day before, but I've been stuck on this game, so I'm going to try to return to it tonight and hopefully have a review out later on this week, so look out for that. So, the meat and potatoes of today's video, talking about the Analogue Pocket, which I have here. Now, a couple of things I want to mention here. Having had the luxury of being able to test this out and play around with it. And I got to get this out of the way because I got a bunch of people ramming a pitchfork up my ass. Oh, CG, you're throwing the Mister under the bus, and you're laughing at people that are into the Mister and the Framemeister, but here you are purchasing an Analogue Pocket, you hypocrite. I bought this. I pre-ordered this over a year ago, back in December, and I publicly said one of the reasons why I picked this up was I wanted to review it on the channel, and I have openly admitted that this device, again, we'll get into it in a few minutes, is a boutique item. It's very expensive. I don't think it's necessarily something that you need to have if you're into handheld retro gaming. Like the Game Boy is an example. Again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. But anyone who's out there that's got the old pitchfork out, calm down. We'll get into it in just a minute here. So I have made a list of positive takeaways and negative takeaways regarding the Analogue Pocket. Now I do want to also mention, unfortunately, Now that I've had the opportunity to test this out and play with it hands-on, I'm going to level with you guys. I'm going to be honest with you guys. A lot of the YouTubers out there, if not all of them, have not been 100% transparent regarding this device. They haven't been transparent regarding some of the flaws, if you will, and some of the truths behind this device as well. I'm seeing a lot of YouTubers out there with their dicks right up in the air, touting this as the next coming of Christ, but they're not being 100% honest about the product. So that's why with today's video, I want to try to do something a little bit different, a little bit more of a consumer report. We're not going to obsess about the technical specifications of this device. I want to just give you a true, honest, blue-collar opinion of someone who purchased this with their own money and had the luxury of being able to experience it hands-on. So any of you out there that are watching this video and you want a real opinion on it, you can listen to what I have to say, and hopefully you can take my advice, because like I said, nobody sent this to me as a product review. I paid for it with my own money, and I'm going to give it to you gun barrel straight. So with that out of the way, because I don't want this to be a long video, I want to also say, you guys might notice that I'm shooting this video today in kind of a lower resolution using an older camcorder. The reason for that is I like using this camcorder. I've talked about it before. But also, a lot of the reviewers out there that have reviewed the Analogue Pocket, they seem to think that they can capture the essence of this device by shooting their video or posting their YouTube video in 4K and the highest of quality YouTube video, but that doesn't do this device justice, okay? Even if you watch the Digital Foundry review of the Analogue Pocket, you're not going to get a true sense of what this device has to offer, or maybe even its limited capabilities, unless you have it in your hands, okay? A 4K YouTube video is just not going to give you what you need to see, which is having this device in your hands and being able to look at the screen in person. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. So that's why I'm shooting this video in a lower quality format, because I'm trying to explain to you guys it doesn't even matter if I shot this video in 1080p or 4K resolution, I'm not going to be able to capture the quality of the screen on this device. That's what I'm trying to explain. So with that out of the way, let's start things off. I ordered the device back in December of last year, so it took almost a year to arrive. We'll get into that in a bit. There was a bit of a shipping snafu with the device with regards to FedEx. We'll get into that in a bit as well, but we're going to start with the positives first. And the first thing I can say is the build quality. This device does feel like a premium product. Absolutely. I would say it's of better build quality than the original Game Boy or even the Game Boy Advance. It's hefty, it's weighty. It feels like a premium product. It feels like I just bought a new iPhone. Okay, I'm not an iPhone kind of guy, but I know how you connoisseurs are with your iPhones. It feels like a premium device with tempered glass and all the rest of it. You can get the device in black and you can get it in white. I don't know why anybody in their right mind would buy this in white for a number of reasons. White gets dirty a lot quicker. With electronics, white's typically prone to fading. White plastic will go yellow over time. Not to mention when you're playing a game, it's nice to have a black border, have a black console around the screen so you can sort of hone in on the screen. And I find sometimes with white, it's a little bit too distracting on the eyes, if that makes sense. That's why when you buy TVs, they're black. You don't buy white TVs, right? Well, same with this device. What else could we say here? When you're playing the games on this device, yes, okay, the FPGA technology is impressive. The quality of the image is light years beyond what you would get in a Game Boy Advance. This is a AGS 101 model. It is impressive. There's minimal, I would say no shimmering as far as the gameplay is concerned when you're playing the games. And I also find too, more so than the image quality, is just the size of the screen. Especially if you don't have the greatest eyesight. I know when I got into my 30s, my eyesight started to deteriorate, and I have really good eyesight as far as being able to see things at a distance, but up close, I have to wear reading glasses now when I read a book. And when I'm playing a game on my Game Boy Advance, it's kind of the same issue. The screen is relatively small, and it's very hard for me to see what's going on the screen. So to be able to play on the Analogue Pocket, it just makes it that much easier to play the game, and it actually makes the games that I would have difficulty with all of a sudden they're easier to play. So that could either be a positive or a negative, if you will. But really, really impressive quality of image. It almost kind of looks like the image is saturated to a point, but you can turn that off and you can put it back to how it would look on an original Game Boy or a Game Boy Advance. And there's even a setting where you can have the pea green color like on an original Game Boy, and they pulled it off impressively that you really feel like you're playing these games on an original Game Boy. But what impresses me the most about the quality of the screen and the resolution is when you play an original Game Boy game and you put it on the black and white mode. In my opinion, that's what looks the most impressive, is when you play it in black and white. More so than when you play a Game Boy Advance game or a Game Boy Color game, because those games you can't really play around with the colors. But with an original Game Boy game, you can certainly have access to a few more settings. So I thought that was really, really impressive. As far as the battery life is concerned, I haven't actually ran it all the way through, but I have played it for a couple of hours now, and I have plenty of battery left. I would comfortably say the battery life on this device is leaps and bounds above an original Game Boy. That being said, the Game Boy Advance, at least the one I have here, the SP model, is that what it's called? Game Boy Advance SP? This one has incredible battery life, to be honest with you. This one lasts hours and hours and hours as well with the lithium battery. So, yeah. We're really looking at quality of life improvements on this device. When you play this and then you take the game out and you put it in here and you play them back to back, because I checked it out. I tried it with Kirby's Dream Land. I mean, it's not life-changing, but it is pretty drastic. Once you start playing the Game Boy games on this, there's no way you're going to go back to this, right? But if you were playing your games on this and you didn't have one of these, you wouldn't know any better, and this would be serviceable. So I'm just throwing that out there. You can take out a cart while the device is on, and you can put another cart in. You don't have to turn the device off, which is a nice quality of life feature. And it was fairly easy to update the firmware on this as well. You just go on to Analogue's website, you download the firmware update to an SD card, and then you put the SD card into the Analogue Pocket and you turn it on, and it instantly recognizes the firmware and updates the software on the device. So relatively easy to do. I did that right away when I got the device. So lots of positives, and at least for me personally, yes, the resolution is incredible, but the screen, even though it's bigger on this than a Game Boy Advance, as an example, it's not so big that the image is jumping out at you like, oh my god, this is fucking, FPGA, oh my god. At least to me, it looks sharp. Yes, it looks sharp, but to me, the biggest quality of life improvement was just actually the size of the screen. And when you factor that in on the sharp image, it just makes it so much easier to play these games, because a lot of these older games, with my eyesight, playing it on the Game Boy Advance here, it's just a little bit too small. It's very difficult. So absolutely, some serious quality of life improvements with the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance games. Playing the Donkey Kong Country version on the original Game Boy, as you see here, I was playing it today, and the colors were so vibrant. At certain points, I almost felt like I was playing the Super NES version. The colors were so vibrant. I'm like, I don't remember the original Game Boy, having colors that were this good, the Game Boy Color. And man, it's a whole nother topic for another day, but this version of Donkey Kong Country doesn't get talked about very much, but it's actually quite incredible, quite impressive that Rare was able to recreate Donkey Kong Country on the Game Boy, and it's almost a 1-for-1 of the original Donkey Kong Country on the Super NES. It's a real impressive port. I'm sorry, it is. I don't know if any of you guys have played it. It's really impressive. The music's impressive. As far as I can tell, all the levels are there. It's pretty well the same game. Almost. It's really impressive. Had this version of Donkey Kong Country came out on the NES back in the day, man, we would be talking about it today like it's one of the greatest NES games of all time. Absolutely. So we're getting a little bit off topic here. So with all these positives regarding the device, you must be wondering to yourself, how could there be anything negative with regards to this device? Well, there's a couple of things, and I have to mention them. These are things that I haven't really seen any other reviewer mention, and if they have, I do apologize. I haven't watched all the reviews out there, but I've got some serious criticisms of this device. I do, absolutely. So the first criticism is customer experience, and I'm not alone. I ordered this device back in December of last year. Why the hell did it take almost a year to arrive? And it begs the question, I know it's a huge accusation, but you gotta wonder if Analogue is taking all this pre-order money, they're holding on to it for almost a year, and they're taking those funds and they're investing it somewhere, and they're building interest somewhere, or they've taken the funds and they've invested it somewhere else to make more money. That's what it looks like. It does. You took all this money and you sat on it for 11 months. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good at all. And then you just randomly, out of the blue, shoot me an email in late October. Your device is being shipped. It's like the device was all ready to go months ago, and you purposely delayed the shipment of it. That's what it feels like to me. And then the customer experience issues continue. You can't get a hold of Analogue. There's no way to call them. They don't respond to emails. They shipped the device via FedEx, unbeknownst to me. And then when I ordered it, I gave them my mailing address, but FedEx doesn't deliver to post office boxes. They only deliver to physical addresses. Then I got hit with an additional fee from FedEx because once the device comes into another country, you got to pay the tax or the GST on it. So I'm not blaming Analogue for that, but this is just something else that I wasn't prepared to pay. I didn't know it was coming via FedEx. So that was kind of a shit show for sure. The device, talk about the price, it's super expensive, you know? I can't even remember how much this is USD. Is it $229? I don't know. It's pretty expensive, you know? If this device was like $150, sure, why not? $200, maybe. But once you start getting into $229, you know, $230, $240, $250, all the other accessories you can get are super expensive as well. These things begin to add up. When it was all said and done, factoring in taxes and shipping and handling and everything, I was up to about $400 Canadian when this finally arrived. So yeah, it's not cheap whatsoever. The other thing I want to talk about too is the size of the device. So I find it funny that they do call it the Analogue Pocket because although yes, technically you could fit this in your pocket, this is not a small device, guys. You can see my cell phone's pretty big, but even my cell phone is small compared to this device. And I don't even find it comfortable to put my phone in my pocket. It's so big. But this thing here, it's like almost the size of an original Game Boy. You wouldn't walk around with this in your pocket. No fucking way. You'd be out of your mind. The device is fragile. The second time I picked it up, after having taken it out of the box, I actually dropped it, but luckily it didn't hit the floor. I dropped it, but I was able to sort of catch it before it hit the floor. But heaven forbid you drop this, you're going to crack the screen in no time. It's going to break. You're going to be extremely upset. And then once you crack the screen, you're probably not going to be able to get it repaired. You'd have to send it away to Analogue if you can. I don't even know how that works. So if you buy one of these, it's not like... And this is one of my huge criticisms of the device. Sure, maybe the screen on the old GBA is not up to snuff compared to the Analogue Pocket, but this thing here, at least you can close up the shell. You can pretty well bash this around. You can throw it in your gym bag. You can absolutely put this in your pocket. I have thrashed this around on many of occasions, and yeah, this is a great device that I'm not too concerned about leaving in my car or throwing in my gym bag or getting it scratched. You know, this is something that you could seriously toss around, and that's what it's meant for, right? Because at the end of the day, when this came out, it wasn't considered a retro gaming device. It was just considered a toy. Whereas when you get into this, you're getting into like a boutique item. Look at it. Look at the goddamn screen on it. Okay? You are not going to throw this in your gym bag, ladies and gentlemen. You are not going to be throwing this in the backseat of your car, okay? You're not going to be leaving this somewhere where it could get damaged, whether it be water damage or, you know, somewhere where it's not safe. This is a very expensive boutique item, so you're going to have to buy yourself a case or a lockbox or its own briefcase, but you're not going to be walking around with it exposed like this. I'm sorry. So that's a big gripe of mine. The other thing too, when I got the device and you open up the box, it comes with no charger brick, which is fine, whatever. We all have them. But the USB cable, for whatever reason, they give you a USB-C to USB-C cable. What the fuck am I going to do with that? Okay? Where am I going to plug in the female end of the cable? Like, could you not just give us a regular USB to USB cable? What the fuck? Seriously? So that cable's useless to me. So I ended up just using my my USB-C cable from my cell phone to charge this device. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. I don't know why on earth they would have done that. I don't know. The other gripe I have is the ergonomics. I guess maybe they were going for a retro-inspired look of the original Game Boy when they developed this device, but anyone who's an enthusiast of the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance, talk to anyone, folks. Talk to anyone, and they'll tell you what would be the dream Game Boy device. Would be a Game Boy Advance that has the backlit screen from an AGS 101 unit like this, but the ergonomics of the first edition of the Game Boy Advance, where you've got the D-pad on one side and you got the buttons on the right side and the screen in the middle, where it's like a nice size, right? Especially for adult hands, it's the right size of a portable device, kind of like an Atari Lynx or a Game Gear. That's perfect, and that's the problem with the AGS 101 model. Nintendo came out with the better backlit screen, but then they got this device that's rinky-dinky and it's so hard to hold and it hurts your hands and it's just not a good form factor. So that's why a lot of enthusiasts out there will buy an original Game Boy Advance with the nice form factor, and they'll upgrade the backlit screen so it's like an AGS 101 screen in an original Game Boy Advance. That's the Cadillac setup right there, right? So for Analog to come out with this device, I feel it's a missed opportunity. They should have came out with the ergonomics similar to the original Game Boy Advance. It would have been perfect, because this device, while it is bigger than the Game Boy Advance, it's still not great. It's still, like, at least for me, look at my hands. It's not ideal. It would have been better if they had it like the original Game Boy Advance. I don't know why they did that. That was a huge misstep, a huge missed opportunity. I don't know why they did that. For me, I was upset before I even pre-ordered the device. Hopefully they come out with a version 2 where they revise the ergonomics of the Analogue Pocket, hopefully. The other issue here, a big issue that I haven't heard any other YouTubers mention, but I noticed it while I was playing, specifically when you're playing original Game Boy games. So you'll see here, to give you an example, let me see here. We'll take Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy, right? And we'll put it into the Game Boy Advance, the original model. Okay? You see it? It's in there. It's not moving, right? It's in there nice and tight, right? Right? Well, the problem with the Analogue Pocket is look at the back of it, right? And you put the game in like this. Okay? It's in there. You see it? You got your hands, you're playing it. You got your hands up like this. Look at this. You see that? It's so easy to off-kilter the cart. And when you do that, that disrupts the game, unfortunately, and it's happened to me. Sure, you're not going to purposely do that, but sometimes it's unavoidable, because you could be like this, and all it takes is a little nudge. Look. And the fucking game goes off-kiltered. So the problem is they didn't build the plastic high enough to hold the cart in reasonably well. So it's not an issue if you're playing a Game Boy Advance game on the Analogue Pocket, but when you're playing an original Game Boy game and you got your hands up here like this because there's nowhere else to put them, you can't hold it like this, right? You got your hands up here on the shoulder buttons, right? And oh. Yeah. So that's a big fucking problem right there. That's a big fucking problem. So I was talking to Relic Gamer about it, and he said, this was an issue with some of the earlier models. I don't think so, man. I think this is an issue with the device. I don't think it's an issue with my device. I think this is how it is. As long as you don't touch the cart, it's not a problem. But if you accidentally put your hand on it, then it disrupts the gameplay, which is rather unfortunate. So, yeah, that's a big problem, absolutely. I also talked to Relic Gamer, and he mentioned issues with the firmware updates. He mentioned not everybody has a laptop or a computer. Makes it difficult to update the firmware. You know, why isn't there built-in memory on this, RAM on this device, where you can just hook it up to Wi-Fi from the device and download a firmware update? There is a workaround for that, Relic. You can download the firmware update using a mobile device or a smartphone, if you will, to your SD card or your micro SD card on your cell phone or your smartphone, and then you can take that SD card and you can put it into the Analogue Pocket and update it. So yeah, but it is an inconvenience for sure. And speaking of SD cards, my God, that was one of the first things I noticed when I got this device. So the SD card goes in the side here. I don't know if you can see it. And when you put it in with your finger, it won't go in. It will not go in. The only way I was able to get it in, I had to get a pair of tweezers, and I had to actually stick it in far enough that you could hear the little click. Because just pressing it in like this with your finger, it won't go in. It absolutely won't go in. You need to have either a knife or a ballpoint pen, or you have to have a pair of tweezers to get the goddamn SD card in. So that was really bizarre. So why am I telling you all these things? Because I feel it is important for you guys to understand as a consumer that while this device can be amazing, there's a lot of capabilities. You know, it has been, I guess the term is jailbroken. You can now put in ROMs on an SD card. I don't think I'm really going to go that route. I might get an EverDrive. We'll see. It's not perfect. You know, if you can see my collection back here, I've got a fair amount of Game Boy games, but I don't have a lot. I don't have 50, 60, 75, 100 Game Boy games. So for me to have, what is it here, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, almost 30 games. So you're going to pay hundreds of dollars for this device just to be able to play a bunch of games that I've already played before. Might not make a lot of sense, right? But if you plan on getting maybe an EverDrive and you want to play games off the EverDrive, it might expand your horizon as far as what there is to offer on this device. So would I recommend it? If you're really into Game Boy, absolutely, or some of the adapter cards you can get. Hopefully there's an aftermarket company that will release those adapters so you can play Game Gear games and all the rest of it without having to pay that premium price for those adapters through Analogue. But yeah, if you're an enthusiast, I would say it is worth it, absolutely. But if you're a casual and you don't have a huge collection, you may not want to actually buy this. You may actually be better off purchasing an authentic Game Boy Advance, and you could probably purchase a handful of games to go along with it versus spending hundreds of dollars on the Analogue Pocket. And there are pros and cons to it as well. Like I said, it is a boutique item. You're going to want to purchase a case for it. Then you got to go out and buy a proper USB cable for it as well, and a charger, because these things don't come with the device. And if you want all the accessories, that's more money as well. So yeah, in closing, it is a fantastic device. I think I will enjoy my time with it. We don't know what long-term reliability is. It's a bit of an unknown with this device. Who knows if the company Analogue will be around 5 to 10 years from now. So there are a lot of what-ifs with this device. It is, like I said, a niche product, a boutique item, if you will. You can't go into a retail outlet and purchase this over the counter. You have to order it directly from Analogue and pay additional shipping and handling costs and wait up to a year for the goddamn thing to arrive. So yeah, it's not perfect. It's not for everybody. I think it is a fantastic device. I think it is overpriced. Do I regret purchasing it? Somewhat. I think, like I said, I will enjoy my time with it. But if you're a casual gamer or you don't plan on purchasing an EverDrive, then I would probably say don't waste your time with this. Go out and get an authentic Game Boy Advance. Perhaps the first edition of the Game Boy Advance, the first model, and upgrading the screen to a backlit screen and enjoying your Game Boy Advance games that way. So I hopefully this review was informative, and I really appreciate anyone that stuck around to the end. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.